now we have the awesome team from Infer who have been working on something a lot more advanced. So it's an AI-driven conversational bot platform they're building that enables you to do some interesting scenarios such as customer service, business development, etc. So Ed is going to talk to us about what these guys are doing, also show us a little demo. So we're very, very excited about you guys. You came from...
Is that right?
It's okay.
It's all right. We'll just run with it because I felt restless. So,
okay, cool. You've been waiting too long. Yeah.
So, do I need a mic or can I just talk normally?
Mic.
Okay, mic. Okay, cool. So we're Infer. We're a team of machine learning people. All of us come from a machine learning background, and we believe that you can go a long way without NLP and AI, but we really think that you need good, strong NLP to make these things good. And that's what we are providing and building. So I think I'm used to meetups being for technical audiences, people that are interested in the same thing and are thinking about how to solve problems. And that's really what I thought I'd talk about. So I think, what do we need to do as bot builders and bot creators? We need to make bots good. That's a no-brainer. And to me, I feel that you need to solve some pretty difficult problems in NLP. You need to make building bots easy. So I think at the moment, the process of creating a bot is quite laborious and difficult, and those barriers actually need to be reduced. And then you need to make integrating bots easier. So I'm just going to talk about the first two things, or some of the problems of those first two bullet points. So how do we make bots good? So I'm a machine learning person. I believe that we need good NLP. And these are, I don't know if you guys recognize these names, but these are some of the big boys that have been around in machine learning for years. And in 2015, all of them said, deep learning, the next big thing for deep learning is natural language processing. So that's machine understanding of text and language data, which, so that's really kind of like a motivating thing for us. So what's our approach to making NLP work in the messaging context? So this is my primitive kind of schematic of what a deep neural network is. So for us, our deep neural networks take language in at the character level, and then they process that at different hierarchies, and then the representations it has of those hierarchies roughly correspond to the meanings of words, and then the meaning of phrases, and then ultimately the meaning of sentences. So if you train these networks well, the property that we really want them to have is that things that mean the same have roughly the same representation. So we put a sentence in at the bottom, it goes through all these layers, and then at the top, we just have a vector of numbers. So here, if someone's saying, I want a ticket to New York, that has like this representation of numbers. And if someone else said, get me a flight to New York, which is, only has New York in common, we want that vector of numbers that represents that thing to be very similar. And that basically corresponds to these things conveying the same meaning, right? You wouldn't be able to remember if someone asked you either of those two phrases. You just remember the meaning of what they said. But if someone says, I want to leave New York, that's a very different meaning. It's still got the words New York in it, but it will have a very different kind of representation and meaning space. And this is like the core thing that we spend a lot of our time working on. So then, if you build a really great neural network for understanding the meaning of a sentence, you still have to extract entities from that sentence, right? So a lot of conversational agents, like bots you see now, are very procedural. So they ask you loads of short form questions, and I think that ultimately that kind of user experience gets tiring, and you need to be able to take a slightly higher, you need to have like a higher bandwidth channel than that, and you need to be able to take more pieces of information when you're processing that data. So you need to be able to really extract many pieces of information from a single user queries. And that's actually quite a difficult problem. So if you say, I want to, I'm building a flight bot, I want to be able to respond to all requests for a flight. There's really three core variables in a flight, right? It's your origin, it's your destination, and it's the date you want to go. If you just want to go, if you just want to understand something that says, I want to go to some destination on some day, there's really thousands of different ways, different permutations of that kind of destination time matrix, all the combinations, if you know what I mean. But if you have an origin, a destination, and a date, it really becomes quite a difficult kind of combinatorial space you're trying to extract their meaning from. So that's a difficult problem. So those are the two kind of core technical things that we see ourselves as really contributing to. And then ultimately, specifying the behavior of a bot needs to be much simpler. So how can we make building a bot easier? So we're a platform for creating bots and deploying bots and managing bots. So one way that you can do it is say, well, just pick a very simple problem and solve that. That's the easiest way to make anything easier. You just, by definition, only solve a subset of the problems. So that's the boring way of making this thing easier. But then I think for how we view this problem, and I think it comes a lot down to conversational design as well, and also I think that question of how you would explore a database of products, or how you would find the things that interest you, is a kind of what we call like a decorative or versus imperative design of what a conversational agent can do. So I would say current bot design specification takes quite an imperative approach. So you design a storyboard and you say, okay, well, where are you going? I'm going to some destination. And then where are you leaving from? Some origin. And it has this specified flow. And if you want to handle the other flows, you have to specify them as well, right? So you go from defining a storyboard, defining a particular flow, to those pieces of information and the kind of actions you want to support. But the approach that we see as having more traction in terms of being more powerful, creating a more intuitive user experience, but also making it more lightweight to create these things, is a decorative approach. So you say, really, there's three things I need this conversational agent to be able to recognize. And once I've got those three pieces of information, we can serve up that piece of content, right? And so on the left here, I said there's three pieces of information, and then this is one conversational flow which could lead to those pieces of information being gathered and then the flights being served. But equally, the user could have specified in that first intent, like, I want to go from New York to London. And then the next question is, okay, cool, when do you want to leave? So there's only one more piece of information it needs. Or equally, this other conversation. So, this approach is much more lightweight on the designer's task and more flexible. So I think I'm going to drop the microphone. It's too hard to do both at the same time. So can everyone see that? No.
Maybe if you go on the web interface, you can zoom in the background there.
Maybe I think everyone wants to leave. Okay, cool. So I just want to show you some of the different interactions you can have from a very simple, specification of the functionality. So here I would say, okay, I want to go to Paris. And then, there are the pieces of information that it wants So where are you flying from? It's like London. Next Friday, right? So these flights have properties, and you can filter the results leaving before 10 a.m. So you can filter the results by specifying, the different variables that they have, or like direct only. So this is, we're just trying to show you the functionality of this kind of specifying the properties of things and that conversation flow. But you could equally say, okay, I want to go from London to Paris.
Should live dangerously and you're free.
So this, and then it just asks you those remaining pieces of information. So this is that's really what I wanted to show, is that if you can have these if you specify the properties of things and the ways in which you can interact with them, you can have many different conversational flows. Yeah, thanks. I'll let everyone get up.
So there's a lot more food outside, guys, and some breaks. So yeah, help yourself, and you can ask questions to the speakers. Thank you. Thanks for coming.